Same way we go to the one down in Exeter. Back here.
Yeah, yeah, she come in here.
The table starts. Yeah. I don't know the guy in that, but I heard he has gamma problem. Because he was almost. I think he kept one of them open. He's Greenwich.
When he's going to, no, no, I'm going into that.
Yeah.
A little tiny.
Yeah. That's going out too?
Yeah. There's another little. Send me to the like the tag over.
Yeah.
You're all
Best chicken palm in town.
Yes, they do.
Really, pizza's only okay.
Yeah, it's a steak one.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I like yeah, I know. You win it? They were walking out again. I try to like the chicken because sausage is actually mean. Very, very nice. Yeah.
My neighbor just got
Yeah, it was yesterday too, but it was, I one of my stops. And I bought it down. And then, how you doing? They know it.
Call this meeting to order at 7:03. The chair will entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
I second the motion. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. The chair will entertain a motion to seal the minutes from executive session.
Motion to seal minutes.
We have a second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, we call the regular town council meeting to order. Roll call by the clerk, please.
Carrie McGee,
Yeah?
Greg LaVorsinier,
Here.
Deb Bacon,
Here.
Gary Cody,
Here.
Ian Dixon,
Here.
Nicholas Gorham,
Here.
Ed Wazika.
Here.
The next item is pledge of allegiance. I ask everybody stand and move their head here, please.
Aye.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation by Reverend Paul. Did you be so kind? Thank you. I hope I pronounced it correctly. You did? All right, great.
Let's pray. Heavenly Lord, on this evening where it's rather cool and we don't particularly look forward to snow, but if it's coming, we're glad we have town employees and others that can take care of us. We're thankful for this meeting. We may come here with special interests or special concerns, but we have a common goal, a common good, and that's to serve our community and be served by our community. So bless the council and the representatives here and citizens that share. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, emergency evacuation plan, Council Sergeant?
Yes, a case of emergency, the two exits in the railing, just go to your right and left. Take you outside. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is President's comments. I don't have a lot of comments this evening, except that budget season's coming up, and I'd like the taxpayers to know that our first public town council work session will be on April 1st, so set that date aside. We also have one with the school department on March 4th. So if you can, set the dates aside and come on down and give your opinion and help us. We're going to have a lot of work to do on our budget this season. The next thing, and I've mentioned this at a couple of meetings, is we have vacancies on boards and commissions. So I'd love to see some people step up and volunteer for these boards and commissions. We have a vacancy in District 1 for the Tax Assessment Board of Review. We have 2 alternate vacancies on the Sewer Subcommittee. We have 1 vacancy on the Historic District Commission. We have 1 vacancy on the Juvenile Hearing Board. We have 1 alternate vacancy on the Zoning Board of Review. And we have 1 vacancy on the Patuxent River Authority. So once again, I encourage anybody who has any interest at all in stepping up and helping out with the community to please put an application in with our town clerk during the day, and we welcome all applications and any help you can give us. Okay, the next item on the agenda will be the approval of the town council minutes from January 14, 2019 and January 28, 2019. The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion.
Right, we have a motion, I have a second.
I second it.
Do we have any comments, any additions, subtractions? Yes.
Just the January 15th, I will abstain.
Mike?
Okay, thank you.
Because I was absent.
Okay, so why don't we do them separately then, and we'll just do the January 14th first. So I will re-ask for a motion for January 14th town council minutes.
Motion.
Have a second?
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. The next one, I'll be looking for a motion for the January 28, 2019 minutes.
Motion.
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda will be Finance Director 6-month report. John, it's all yours.
Good evening, Council. So I'll make this pretty quick. Please stop me if you have any questions. It's pretty self-evident as far as the information is concerned. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. And if you see something that you'd like in the future, again, you can let me know now or in the future as you go through this again.
John, could I ask you to get closer to that microphone?
Sure. Is this much better? All right. So again, we're just going to go through in the same way as we were last time. Go through the revenues, and then we're going to talk about the department spendings, and then some important financial items that are coming up, and then some summary questions. You'll see that I didn't, the first thing you'll notice right now, I didn't do a year-over-year change. The reason is for that is there's no significant change. Really, it's just, it's been a really hectic past month. So no significant change there anyway. If you'd like me to throw that in again, I will be more than happy to. Again, our actual to budget is pretty much right in line with that 50% mark, and pretty close to budget as we were expecting. So again, very similar, we're looking for that 50% mark. Again, this is the same slide as last time, in which you just have to think about budget seasons and where things come and go. Winter time is upon us, and knock on wood, we can, maybe a snowstorm or two, but it's so far so good. Keep those down, those expenses, but just keep that in mind. And as Parks and Recs will be coming up on the springtime as well, so things do change. So, as last time, you have requested to do a, on the top and the bottom, fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19, so you can see a little better rather than stacked. I did it this way. You can see that on the very bottom, it's the 50% to 60%. What you'll notice right off the bat is the Board of Canvassers is a little bit higher. That's because of the special election that we had. We also had to order, it's required by the state, we had to order new books for it. The election, we had to have print copies of these, even though nobody uses them, we are required to buy them. So that's why we're a little skewed here. Human Relations was broken out last year as a department by itself, hence why it's at 0% for fiscal year 18, and that's why you don't see any in that particular column, but it's right at 50% as well. Town Council, we obviously had a little bit of a changeover this year, so it's a little bit higher, and it's a little bit more expenses at the very beginning with the some of the refreshments and things. It's not outstanding. And that budget itself, remember when we talk dollars versus percentages, the actual budget for the town council budget is really, really, really minimal. So it's a couple $100, but that's kind of swinging things up. Okay. Any questions for this one? All right. Again, Board of Assessment Review, you're seeing that again with the special council, or the special election. It's a little bit high, and that's why, is that 52%? No, that's last year. Board of Assessment Review, that's actually really low this year. We're actually way under that. I was looking at this number. Again, everything's pretty much right in line with everything. You'll see that the treasurer's office is a little lower. That's just because of the fact that Bob T is not here, so there's a little bit of cost savings in the employees. And then everything else is pretty much in line. Very similar to this one. Everything year over year is pretty close. Emergency management is a lot lower this year than last year. Not sure what that is about. I can get in touch with the police department, but it is much lower. I do know that that one particular area is, I believe, is a newer department relatively. So things are sort of being added to it and moving around as it's a newer department in and of itself, so newer accounting codes and things like that. Again, hence the police civilian dispatch and police civilians employees, those are newer breakouts for departments. This is again part of the transparency portal of why they were broken out. As we do this in the audit, you'll see that you have these special codes, so that's why they were also broken out a couple of years ago and why you see 0.
This year is the first year on that.
Correct. So, again, everything's pretty much right in line, except for that emergency management is a little bit different, but very, very close to where we are. We do have a little bit higher expenditures with the police department. I believe there's a little bit higher amount in some testing, a little bit more overtime hours, but it's just a little bit up. And this is again as of December. Again, year over year change, you're pretty much right in line where you were last time. We have a little bit more when it comes to the refuse disposal, but again, think in context of that 50% mark. So if we look at the 50% mark, we're doing pretty good as far as the amount of budget that was allocated and how much is remaining. The vehicle maintenance has gone up a lot, which you would expect of the aging fleet, but it is a little higher than what was budgeted. Again, this is all part of DPW expenses, so because they are lower in certain areas, there might be ability to pivot and provide funding for a little higher expenditures here. Again, right in line with what you would expect. Year-over-year change, but again, the zoning board of review. These dollar figures are pretty low, so as far as the actual percentages and as far as being able to cover expenses, not that much. But again, pretty much in line with what you had last year. I like the public service personally. But anyway, so public service, here we go. Year-to-year change is pretty much right in line with what you would expect, which means this is speaking of volumes on the directors and the department heads with a little bit lower budgets and things like that that happened in the past couple of years, how they're spending pretty much year over year pretty closely. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
On this one here, recreation department, 52%.
Parks and Rec.
Police department had another one, the court had another one that was a little bit higher.
Okay.
Municipal court had another one. Does that take into account any of the money that those departments have generated back in?
No,
As
this
far
is
as
just-
the, the expenses of summer camp and things like that, and like the municipal court, any money and fines that are coming back in from that, or does that percentage take any of that into account, or will that be figured into next year?
This is strictly based off of what was appropriated to them in their budget, just by budgeted amount, by expenditures. This doesn't take into account all the extra revenues. So some of these departments may actually be generating even more revenues than they're expending. For in great that you pointed out, Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec does generate some revenues from, again, I like using revenues, but they collect some dollars for the services that they do render. So This is just strictly just what's been budgeted to them.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any questions when it comes to the expenses besides the? Okay. So as a general update, where we standing on the financial in the department, the big items that are coming up. The financial meeting was going to happen tomorrow. I'm actually going to be meeting with each department head this week. I've actually sort of given a smaller piece of information that I'd like them to spend their time wisely doing, because I'm looking for some fixed expenses and looking for some specific information to help us go forward. I think the time would be much better used that way. I've actually tried to set up a meeting with the school department for tomorrow as well, for some other time. But things are progressing very well when it comes to all the departments. Communication is still taking place, so we're doing well there. The fiscal year 18 audit, this is good. We're in the absolute final stage right now. Things are over with the state with the municipal transparency portal. We're just waiting for their blessing, saying that we're good with their document, and we're done. So the school side's done, the town side's done. We're just waiting for that one piece to be provided to us that we can say we can compile all the documents. Their auditor's doing their internal review right now, so we should be done within the week. I would also follow that up with, I've already asked the auditor if they wouldn't mind coming in at the next council, provided that we are done within this week, to present, and they would be more than happy to. You may not have the spiral bound binder for the presentation, but at least you would have the PDF. So at least we'll be done by the end of February. So pretty good. The Police and Human Services Bond Part 2. This is again something that was the construction that came along when I came in here. So on top of doing all the audit, on top of doing the budget season, I'm putting together the bond package so that I can get out there so that we can continue on with the project without losing any time. That is on track, ready to go. Once this audit comes in, it'll be attached. All documents, all pieces have been updated to it, all schedules, so it will be turned around without any delay in the building process. The Office Inspector General, we've had a rough draft sort of presented to us, and they're still in the stages of finalizing it, but it should be coming soon. That's the best that I can do again. So some good recommendations in there, a lot of things that we already knew I was going to see, so just stand by for that one as well. And with that, that is it. Like I said, I was going to be a little bit quick tonight. I am more than happy to answer as best I can all the questions you can.
All right, thank you for that. The only thing I would ask is next time we get colored, they all look the same to me. I said, they're all black and white. So when you send the next package, there's a nice
I was
colored
just trying to
draft.
save some money, sir.
Yeah, well, they all look the same to
What about
me.
color?
You know,
It's a good idea to save money.
Yeah, I
I
know.
was thinking.
you know what might be a good idea if we have the tablets. You can fall right along on the tablets. And you can
That would require a lot of computer knowledge. Okay, does anybody from the council have any questions?
I've got a question. I've got something else in my packet, which is collections. Is that part of this package or no? Or is that moving to the next?
Are we looking at, I included the collections as well, just so you can see the dollar figures a little bit, but that's sort of it's just extra information if you'd like to review it. These all tied into our collection rates at the first slide, but they were here for you as well, just in case you wanted to look a little bit more intently on it.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I had I mean, my question was, I'm a little confused by that. The year to year from 2017 to 20, it looks like our 2018 real estate taxes are, substantially lower than the 2017 taxes. Are they reversed somehow, or is it what's the explanation for that?
It's year-over-year change. As far as, that's a good question.
It seems like there's something that's not quite. I'm wondering if they were actually, if somehow the numbers switched columns.
I pretty much straight copied and pasted and changed around the formatting to fit within this. 74%.
I think we just look into it.
I'll look into it again and I'll
I was just
respond
confused
directly
with
to
that,
it.
that's all, and again, I didn't,
Just send us an email on it.
so if we can, look at that a little, it just looks confusing to me, so I wanna get it straight in my mind.
Very well.
Other than that,
Okay, Councilman Bid, you have a couple of comments?
Maybe I flipped those around. It's very, very possible I flipped that around in my haste to make sure that this was done correct.
just confirm.
I will definitely confirm, because if I flip them around, it looks much more in line if I flip 2017, 2018 to original
Right.
levies and what should be.
And know how easy it is to miss a copy and paste.
Very easy to just transpose those. I'll double check that for sure though, and respond to it.
Okay. Go ahead.
John, just one quick question like I did last time. The town's contingency fund, do you know the amount that's in there?
It's a few $100,000, I want to say it's $200,000 that was budgeted for that line item. There has been a couple expenditures in that line item. I'll get a breakout for that. Sorry, I completely forgot about that one.
And then when we get our budget books, I don't know if this year, I know I've asked in the past for personnel listing of all the departments. This is how it was done a few years ago, and I don't know if, I think it was done in maybe 14. But it would say the title of the department, you know, the personnel. It'll give their salary, it'll give benefits, any type of medical waivers.
Do you want
It's broken down by, yes,
a full breakdown for each employee, name,
and by
and
department.
waivers by department, included on this?
In the budget book?
Oh, in the
in our
budget book,
budget
okay.
books,
I
yeah.
was thinking in this
No,
presentation.
I just wanted to.
In the budget book, okay. Going forward for the budget season, gotcha.
Okay, and I don't know if anything, there used to be commentaries in there, so if there were any increases or decreases in the budget on a specific line, there would be an explanation for it. Are we going to be getting that again this year?
I've been following the same protocols that had happened last year. I've been trying to follow along very similarly to how it happened last year. You can only rock the boat so much at the very beginning, so
Well, that's
just
how it was
follow.
always done previously, and then it changed just within the last few years, so that's why I was just asking if we were going to go back to, it just had
It
more
makes a lot of
information.
sense. It makes a lot of sense for that to take place. I wouldn't say yes or no to that at this present time, just based upon the time constraints, and we are in a much shortened period. But I can definitely see how that would provide a lot more information out there, and very useful information, so I will definitely try to make that happen.
Okay,
Is that
terrific.
good? Is that good enough?
Yes, that'll be great. Thank you. It'll probably save a lot of time, you know, asking a lot of questions.
Absolutely. You know, full transparency, I'm all about that too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. If no other questions, we'll move on to, thank you, John, appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Very welcome.
Madam Clerk, we're going to do consent agenda. Number one, would you please, take some time to read it, please?
Creation of on-call engineering pool for peer review of plans for land development projects and other technical engineering materials and data associated therewith as set forth in the Town of Coventry subdivision regulations, Article 11D.
Mr. Manager, if you want to take control of that one?
That, our town planner, Caroline Wells, will explain what this is about. This was her plan. It makes a lot of sense that we put the cost of this additional engineering that has to be done on some of these projects back onto the developers and taking it off of us. And to do that, we need a whole setup of expertise in different areas. And she's gone through all of the work of obtaining quotes from all different engineering firms that specialize in different types of engineering services, all of which would be needed in the event of some of these projects. So I'll let her explain the whole system to you, though.
Thank you.
Okay. So, just to recap how this evolved. Peer review is really common. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that Coventry doesn't already have it because most municipalities in Rhode Island have some version of this, and they call it project review fee or something like that. And what it is it's an amendment that's already occurred in the subdivision regulations that was passed in December 2017. And what it is it allows the planning commission, if they feel like there is something that they need further assessment on in a development application, and this only applies to major land development subdivision applications and commercial applications, so not minor, not administrative or anything like that. And the planning commission can waive them all together if they want to. But what it allows is a review, a review of engineering materials that an applicant has submitted to the planning commission. As lay people like yourselves, they don't have the technical expertise. As staff, we vet them, but sometimes the material is out of our realm of expertise. In that case, the developer puts money into an escrow account that's held by the town, and we pay out of an engineering pool. So we don't have to go to bid, which would take a lot of time. That's why we have a pool. So we would have an engineer provide us an analysis of what the submittal says, and that would be used by the planning commission in their decision making. Once if the money is remaining, which there usually is, it's returned to the applicant. If there's more money needed, then they put in another round, and that's just how it usually works everywhere. So.
Now, I've got a question. We hire Davis Crossman to do our engineering at this time.
Right.
Why not use that engineer that we hire on the town level?
Well, you would. This would be outside of his expertise. So what he would review is what he's equipped and certified to review. So he could review civil engineering projects, drainage, roads, the sort of normal development we would see. Although I would say, should you choose not to have an engineer, you can use this to pay for that as well, which is what is used in other towns as well. So they would use that for their regular engineering review, which would be paid for by the applicant. But this is outside of that. So when we're talking about solar arrays, and decommissioning, and acoustics, and flicker, these are not something that he has the expertise to really know. He's also not a biologist. There's a number of different technical fields that planning and development touches that we don't have the expertise. There used to be a group called the Environmental Review Team, the ERT, that the Planning Commission could tap to evaluate the environmental impacts of an application, but I don't believe that they're still in existence, but even if they were, they probably don't have the technical expertise of the sort of applications we're seeing now and probably will going forward.
And as you said, this is going to be of no cost to taxpayers. It's funded by the applicant that's putting in a subdivision.
Right, right. And as I have said privately, most developers, if they're at the major land development level or the commercial, they expect this. They know it's coming.
Okay, are there any other questions for the council members?
If I may.
Yes, Yusuf, may.
So, money from this fund wouldn't be coming out to pay the engineer we currently use, because we have him on contract already.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak to that because the engineer's not actually under my department. That's a public works decision.
Yeah.
So if for whatever reason that didn't happen anymore, I think you could.
Okay, and who put the list, or who would put the list together of engineers that we would use on that list? Who would put that together? And secondly, would we use them on a revolving basis, or would we use the engineer that has the expertise in the project that is currently coming up for development?
So in the materials, we actually went out to bid almost a year ago. So it was an open bid that was advertised through the state website and all public portals. So it was an open bidding. And we got 8 submittals back from engineering teams. So there would be a lead engineer, and what we had asked them to do is use your networks and give us a team of experts and give us what their expertise is. So what I'm recommending on this on-call engineer is that we pick 2 main engineering firm teams and 2 alternate in case their main teams are conflicted out for whatever reason, and that often happens because subdivisions work with so many different engineers. So that essentially, as you said, we would go back and forth between our 2 main unless there's a conflict or a need for a special area of expertise that one of the other firms has. And that's how the contract's written. It's at our discretion.
Okay, and you said at the beginning that you weren't sure about the engineering firm we're using now, because that falls under the purview of DPW.
Correct.
Was this, I'm gonna call it a request at this point?
Yeah.
Was this request put together in conjunction with the DPW director and your department?
Yes.
Okay.
He was on my review team. We conferred back and forth. Actually, Bob Joyle, the prior town engineer, was on our review team as well.
Okay.
And Crossman, who the current town engineer comes from, they were not a bidder in this round.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Ms. Wells, could you, I'm looking at the documentation. Just go over how you determine how much money will be put aside by the developer.
That was based on, what I did is I benchmarked other communities and looked at what they asked for. Honestly, that's what it was based on. I looked at what was very typical, what would somebody coming in expect to pay. Obviously, we don't want it too small, because then we just have to go back to the well and ask for more, and that can be arduous, because it has to be sent on to finance and managed that way. So the amounts were realistic, based on, we want to do it in one shot and return their money and get on with it. We're under time frames with our applications, so we don't have time to play games either. So that's asking for just the right amount was what we were looking for.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
Yep, I have one, Caroline. It's on page, I don't know if you have our same packet, page 46 of 93. It's attachment A.
I don't think I have the exact same one that, well, I might have to pay it, let me see.
That's where the fee schedule is located.
So if you want to take this one, we'll look at it, so you can, that's fine.
Yes.
It's number 2. It says the planning commission may waive the project review fee if, in the judgment of the planning commission, the scale or potential impacts of a proposed development do not merit outside review. So can you just explain what would they determine, what criteria would they be using? Now, would it be to also waive the project review altogether, or just the fee?
They would never waive, I don't think they'd ever want to waive the project review.
Okay.
But what they might concur is, especially if it's a development that's fairly recent, but somehow something's changed and it needs a new application. But basically, it's the same information. They might say, well, we've already seen this, we already understand this. In other cases, they might feel that there's not a substantial amount of outside expertise needed. I mean, maybe the town engineer can basically give them, and I actually expect that to be most common, that the town engineer can give them the analysis that they need. So they might say we don't need the escrow because we've already got the town engineer working on it.
Should we write down any criteria that they should follow? Because it just seems very open-ended for interpretation. I mean, it's in their judgment.
Well, it is in their judgment, and I should say that this is a page from the subdivision regulations that they've already amended.
Okay.
So, and they can do that. So I think it gives them the latitude that they need, and obviously as staff, we will make recommendations on those matters, but I don't know that council can tell the commission how to do it. So.
Yes, you have a question?
Yes, just one. What's the benchmark? I mean, if we're talking about a housing development with 20 houses in it, we probably don't need this. If we're talking about a housing development with 60 houses in it, do we need this? Where do we draw the line?
Yeah, I don't
What's
think
the
it's a matter of scale in a housing development, but let's say it's a housing development that is in a sensitive ecological area that bald eagles live in. That we need an assessment of somebody who understands that habitat. I mean, that's what I'm coming up with at this time of night, but I'm just saying, it's not a matter of scale of the development, it's a matter of what level of expertise or what type of expertise is needed to properly evaluate the application.
And who makes the determination on whether the current engineering company has that or doesn't?
Well, so whenever an application comes before the planning commission, as staff, we review it, and so does the town engineer. So the town engineer sends me a memo, the public works director sends me a memo. We will hopefully be starting a technical review committee, which is other department heads reviewing applications. And we put that all into a memorandum to the planning commission. So they'll know whether we feel like this thing has been, if there's a gap in knowledge of what we know about this application. It should be apparent to the staff, which will be conveyed to the planning commission. And then, of course, they can determine that on their own.
Okay, thank you.
Boss, any other questions?
Yeah, I'm still unclear as to this dollar amount that a developer will have to put in into escrow. Who determines the dollar amount, or does it depend on the amount of services that are expected from one of these engineering firms? Or, again, you said it's not by scale. I
Right.
think that a scale would have everything to do with the amount of services that an engineering firm would be putting in.
Depends. It depends on where it's located and
Okay.
what's needed out of the particular area of land.
Okay.
What would usually happen, actually procedurally what will happen, let's say the town engineer says, you know, this isn't really in my wheelhouse, I'm not comfortable with this. And so in discussions with staff and with the planning commission, we determine that some other outside expertise is needed. What I would do is ask these firms, give me a proposal of what this service, you know, develop a scope of work essentially. What is this going to cost? So what you have here are generalized increments, because developers who read our subdivision regs need to have an understanding of what, you know, what our fees are. But what will likely happen is that it's probably some lesser amount. So it's 4,000. So we'll review the scope of work, and they'll give us a proposal, maybe some back and forth. But basically, then we give them a notice to proceed.
Okay, so it's the site plan review that another engineering firm would be
Yeah.
going based on that.
Right.
Okay.
So we're talking peer review. Sounds confusing. It's really project review, but it means that whatever scientific or engineering expertise they put up, we find a peer who can review them. Somebody with equal levels of expertise.
Right, yes, so the developer is coming in with their own particular
Right.
plans, and in essence, we need our opinion on our
Right,
side.
we need our objective consultants to provide.
determine
Right,
whether
exactly.
it's there, okay. And again, so if we decide that the engineering firm we have in here, then they make a choice that we put it out to the firm with the noted expertise.
Correct.
In doing that, so, and at that point, I mean, I know that every project is different. How is the amount of escrow determined, or the amount that the developer has to place out there?
Well, that's why we have these amounts, but if it's significantly less, it often is a conversation that we have with the developer, because they want this to move forward too. They've, at least in my experience, have never wanted to hold up that process.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll talk to them and I'll say, you know, this is what the engineer is telling me, this is what it's going to cost. Can you put the money in escrow? And usually within a day, they'll bring it by.
Okay, so they're cutting a check for the
Yeah.
escrow that goes in there, that we have to pay this firm, that in
Right.
essence, we're hiring, well, they're hiring the firm, but.
They're
you
paying,
know,
but we're the clients.
But we're the client, so the
Right.
fiduciary duty of that engineering firm comes to the town and is not the developer.
Correct, that's why the contract is with the town. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, we don't have to take action, but I guess the chair, one thing, if you want to let us sit and take it over, that's fine, but I'll entertain a motion to approve this if you so desire. Do we have a motion? We do not. It seems as though. Yeah, well, yeah,
we need to have a motion.
We need to have a
And,
motion.
you know, I would like to, at this point, I would love to hear the manager weigh in on this. I know the presentation was.
All right, that's fine. You got something else to add?
I think the proposal is an excellent proposal. I think it's something we need. That outside expertise, we have not always had that in some of these projects, and which in turn could possibly be some of the problems on what we've had. So by doing this, enacting this, it gives us the ability to get the people in that we need to review, so we prevent the issue from happening before the project gets started. And no cost to the town, it's on to the people who want to do the development. In fact, I want to look at, when I speak to Caroline, as far as moving our engineering cost into this as well and let them pay for a piece of what we're paying because we are paying a contract engineer at this point. I'd like to look at moving that so we cover a piece of that as well at the same time.
Okay,
Yeah, so I think this is a really good move for us.
that works for me.
I recommend that you,
We have a budget for an engineer, a line item budget for a town engineer. I understand that because of circumstances beyond our town engineer's control, we are currently hiring on a part-time basis an engineering firm to represent the town of Coventry. What I'm looking at is, I want to protect the town moving forward, but I don't want to make it harder and more expensive for developers to do business in the town of Coventry. I don't want this to be another stumbling block that's in the line of development in the town of Coventry and I'll just use the example that you gave. Well, there's an eagle nesting in that tree. So now, because there's an eagle nesting in that tree on a 75-acre development, we have to hire a special firm to come in and do special surveys because there's an eagle. Listen, if it's a recognized wetlands by DEM, I understand the regulations and working around that, but I don't want another fee to be thrown at people trying to do business in the town of Coventry to take something off our plate that we have a line item budget to pay for anyway.
I agree, but the line item budget right now is paying for our town engineer who is out sick. So the fees that we're paying now is actually going to be coming out of, as you've approved, out of the contingency fund to pay for this. So I'd like to reduce that amount for the town. I don't want to add fees to a developer, but at the same token, they're coming in, they want to put these projects up. I think they should have a piece of the responsibility of paying for the work that needs to be done to authorize that and not put it on the backs of all of the taxpayers.
And Ms. Wells did mention that it was going to be for major subdivisions,
Right.
not for someone who's coming up, putting up a couple of houses. It's for
Correct.
major, so
Not necessarily just the subdivisions. So-
Major land development
Major land
and commercial
development.
development.
And that would include wind turbines and solar.
Absolutely.
solar
Mainly.
So when you think about it, we did not have the expertise in town, nor did we call on the expertise when some of these projects were approved. And we really need to have the ability to call in experts to give us an opinion about some of these things that people want to implement, projects they want to implement in our town. I don't think this will slow down the process, but I think it protects the town and also protects all the residents, especially those who are abutters to any of these projects. So I'm fully supportive of this project.
And I will add, our subdivision timelines, our statutory timelines by state law are still in play. We can't slow the project down. And the planning commission's already approved this, so if you don't approve the contracting end of it, then that means I have to go out for bid for every one of those, and that will slow the project down.
Okay, that being said, I mean, the town manager does highly recommend this gets approved, so,
I'll make that motion that we approve.
I'll
And this is A and B, correct? We're doing all of,
B is part of
fee
A,
schedule.
yeah.
It's broken down to the fee schedule, which I think was what.
so the taxpayers know says fee schedule on bond and pool, including hourly rates and direct charges and expense schedule.
We do. On call.
And C1, A, and B.
That's correct.
That's correct.
One A and B.
All right, so we have a motion, and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, number 2 on the C2.
A resolution authorizing the Coventry Historic District Commission to adopt the name Coventry Historic Preservation Commission and to pursue additional cultural and preservation promotion activities.
Okay, Mr. Manager, Caroline, is this also yours? Okay, please.
All right, so I've been working with the Historic District Commission for a year and a half now, and they have a lot of ideas, and that's great. But they feel like they're not really empowered to do true historic preservation advocacy, and they have a lot of ideas. And I think that they would just feel more comfortable if they knew council was backing them. They also, the name Historic District Commission It implies regulatory, it implies they're out to create districts and monitor districts, which the town really doesn't have any historic districts except for a couple of properties. So they kind of are short on business and they don't feel very legitimized, let's say.
I think when it was put together, it was because they originally to search for districts and to identify
Yeah.
historic districts in town.
And I think that they feel like that's possible, but they know it's going to be a long process. When they proposed, I don't know if you recall, the standards and guidelines maybe about a year ago, they immediately got some pushback from many residents who are like, you're not going to do that in my neighborhood. And so they're not, in talking with them, I think they'd like to lead with the positives of historic preservation before they come in with the regulatory aspects of it. And there's much work to be done. There's no historic plaque program. There's no historic signage program. There's a lot of things to celebrate in Coventry that are positive and good. And I think council has supported those endeavors with their budgeting in the past. For example, approving budget for our Bright Bridge assessment, which they're actually working on now.
As much as we do, I mean, I'm all for it, but as much as the Historical District Commission is for this, we get as many residents who are against it because they feel the limitations that they'll be living.
Well, yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's a form of zoning, right? So like any sort of regulatory action, you've got to work closely with the community to make sure that they understand the benefits and understand what the constraints are. And that's a long conversation to have. But in the meantime, I think this group would like to see some positive things that would get people excited about Coventry.
Mr. Solicitor, do you have any comment you wanted to mention? You look as though you're itching to...
No, I'm just telling Councilor LaBosnier, there is a particular statute that we would have to follow with all kinds of public notice and so forth before the Historic District Commission or Preservation Commission, whatever we end up calling them, could impose any type of land use regulations on people for historic preservation. This is nothing in this package tonight gets anywhere near that.
Okay.
All right?
Right.
That would be part of our zoning ordinance. We would have to adopt all kinds of regulations. The public would get all kinds of notice. This is not doing
Yeah,
that.
this is almost the opposite of that.
I mean, certainly if the Historic District Commission wants to, be more active and more, proactive in getting recognized and be able to do more for the community, the volunteers that they really helping us. I don't have a problem with it. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes, Councilman Bacon. Okay, well, someone go.
I do have questions, okay? I noticed that the request is that they want to broaden its purpose, but they haven't come up with a purpose statement that they would like to follow. We see the purpose statement from the 2013 Article 19, but it's not really up to us right now, since they've given us the request, to come up with a mission statement or a purpose for them. So I think it would be prudent for the commission to make a presentation concerning what they see as the vision for their purpose, perhaps present some ideas that they would have, and I think it would be easier for us to give them the support that they do need. And I know that you and I have talked about a couple of projects they have in mind, like uniform signage, etc., which would be very valuable, but there are other things I'm sure they want to consider. But I'd like to see a presentation by them, even small. What is their vision? What is their mission? What do they see as their purpose? And then we have something to really vote on.
Yeah.
As far as the title is concerned, I think that would go along with whatever their purpose, their stated purpose is.
Right. Well, I think that the proposed resolution that is in the packet actually defines, I'm sure they're happy to come and present to you, but there's three sort of main aspects that I think they're looking for. One is to develop a historic preservation program, which would get to your point. The other is to provide public education and to start getting grants for public preservation-based activities and like workshops. And then the third thing is to actually have an advisory role when asked to do so. There may be situations where the Planning Commission, like they ask the Conservation Commission or the Technical Review Committee for particular things. It hasn't really come up yet, but potentially it could. Let's say there's a stone wall or some sort of structure, they may be, asked for an advisory opinion on that, which is why you have criteria for your membership of historic preservation. They can't just be anybody, they have to have some sort of expertise or experience.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, and thank you, because you brought that up. I was looking also, I was hoping that they were going to be here tonight, so they were going to give some sort of a presentation, we could ask questions. I did pull their agenda because you referenced it in here, that they had a meeting on December 13th. Those meeting minutes haven't been posted yet, but it said on here on their agenda under old business that parallel a nonprofit, 501c3 they have, and apply for grants. Are they planning, are they, what does that mean?
That's a discussion, and I guess there's a group called Grow Coventry that's been kind of bubbling around for a while. There are some grants that governments can apply for, and there are some grants that only nonprofits or private entities can tap. And so the idea of having a parallel sort of civic organization, whether it be preservation or just Coventry boosterism, would be that they can go after the grants that we as government can't. So that was the idea behind that.
So who would be paying for the application for this 501c3? Would it be Grow Coventry? It would not be the town? Okay.
Yeah. No,
And then it
yeah,
said a
so
discussion on upcoming budget. Are they looking to increase the budget?
I don't
Do you know
believe
what
so.
that discussion was?
No, right now what we're doing is getting quotes. They're starting small. And it's not their fault that they're not here tonight. I actually didn't let them know it was on the, I was waiting for it to arrive an agenda, and it was actually mine not letting them know on time. But getting quotes to get a good idea of what a historic plaque program would cost. Of course, we're getting quotes from different vendors, but they're all Coventry businesses. So they can actually create a budget for some of the program ideas that they have. So that's where they're at.
Yeah, because I did have a question about that plaque program. Who would do the research if they're going to be a historic home?
They would have to, the membership would have to do the research, which isn't hard. I mean, the other towns do it. The applicant, the homeowner would have to pay for part of the cost. It wouldn't be
Exactly, in an application.
Exactly, application and a review and the whole thing, the whole program like that.
And are they going towards a historic districts? Because I know in the, when it came before us on March 12th, 2018, they brought this. It's very detailed, and I know when we had several discussions, there would be public hearings. We would be
Well,
able
that's
to
what
chat
we were
about
just
this.
talking
Yeah.
about. In order to put those standards and guidelines in place, you actually have to have a historic district of more than one property. And that's a long process. That's a process that you have many, many workshops, many meetings. People can often, it's very heated in my experience. People have to come to the conclusion that they see some sort of market benefit or collective quality in doing this. And if they don't, then there's no point in doing it. So that's a long conversation, and I think that they feel like there's other work that they could be doing to promote preservation and to promote Coventry. I think they've had some talks with South County Tourism and kind of go in that direction and more in a boosterism kind of mode rather than regulatory.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I would just ask, maybe we could table this and have this group come back and they could give a presentation to us, and then, the public could also hear and maybe be able to ask some
I think
questions.
on the 25th you have a potential new member candidate too, so it's up to you.
I mean, I'm not opposed to that. I basically look at it as the nature and the people wanting to get a little more involved in it. But I'm not opposed to table and having that presentation to answer some questions. I have no problem with that, and I'm sure that your historic commission will be coming in.
I think a public presentation will go a long way, and only because being in the construction industry as long as I have, I can tell you that if a property owner, the first thing he thinks about when you say to him, well, the Historic Preservation Society is going to be involved, is anything he wants to do to his piece of property is now going to cost 5 times as much as it would have, because the Historic Preservation Society is going to tell him how it has to be done, what exactly has to be done, and recommend contractors that are
Right.
going to do it to their
But
standards.
that's what we're trying to get away from. First of all, the Historic
Exactly.
Preservation Society is a whole other group.
Right.
This group, and what they're trying to say is that's not them, or at least that's not them until Coventry gets what historic preservation is.